If you've watched my last few videos, you may have realized something incredibly important about yourself. Maybe your biggest struggle isn't simply people-pleasing. It isn't just poor boundaries, and maybe it's not just codependency. Maybe somewhere along the way, you lost your core sense of who you are. And maybe somewhere along the way, you stopped recognizing yourself. And maybe feel like you've disappeared. Or maybe you never really had the opportunity to know yourself in the first place. And if that is true for you, then the question naturally becomes, how do I find myself again? The good news is this, because I always like good news. You don't have to manufacture a brand new identity from scratch. Not at all. You simply have to reconnect with the parts of yourself that never had the opportunity to fully develop. And again, the good news is that your identity isn't something you have to suddenly find. It's something you can slowly rediscover about yourself. And so today I want to share 5 practical ways you can begin that exact process. Number 1, become curious about yourself again. One of the very first things I encourage my clients to do is to practice being curious rather than critical. Huge difference. Ask yourself questions maybe you have not muttered in years, like, what do I actually enjoy? What really gives me energy? What interests me? What kind of life do I want to build? Now, of course, asking those questions doesn't mean you have to have all the answers or the perfect answers today. Because at first, those questions might feel, slightly uncomfortable. And that's okay. Because you're exercising a part of yourself, a part of your brain that maybe you have not used in a very long time. And curiosity is the exact soil where identity begins to grow and flourish. Step 2, start honoring small preferences. Now, many people assume that rebuilding identity requires massive, sweeping life changes. It doesn't. It usually starts much smaller. Choose the restaurant you actually want to eat at tonight. Watch the movie you want to watch. Listen to the music that you really want to enjoy on your commute. Figure out what really brings you joy. Don't acquiesce to the first person. Think about what is really important to you. Take that specific walk that you want to go on. Those little decisions might seem entirely insignificant, but every single time you honor one of those small preferences, you send a powerful message to your brain, which is, my thoughts, my opinions, and my desires really matter. Identity grows through everyday choices, and those choices may seem small, but they add up. But identity is rarely built in one dramatic moment. It is built through hundreds of ordinary decisions where you begin choosing yourself again and again. Step 3, stop measuring your worth by what you do for other people. I think this is arguably one of the most hardest psychological shifts a person can make in this situation. If your identity has been systematically built around being the helper, the responsible one, or the caretaker, then slowing down is going to feel intensely and immensely uncomfortable. You might even find yourself wondering, if I'm not actively taking care of everyone else, what value do I even have? That is an important question. And honestly, that is the old childhood survival pattern talking to you. Your worth has never depended on how much of yourself you can sacrifice, but it once protected you. But it doesn't have to define the rest of your life. Your worth has always existed just because you are here, because you exist. And healing means learning how to believe that. And let's be honest, that is a very different way of living for you. Step 4, reconnect with the parts of yourself you left behind. Now, think back for a moment. Before your life became entirely consumed by heavy adult responsibilities, what brought you pure joy? Maybe you loved writing, reading, art, being in nature, walking, traveling, learning something new. Or maybe you really never had the chance to discover what you loved. And that is okay too. Healing isn't about remembering every answer or having every answer. Sometimes it's just about giving yourself permission to start exploring for the very first time. and that's okay. Or maybe you honestly don't remember right now, and that's completely okay too. Exploring is not childish. It is deeply healing, because every single new experience teaches you something valuable about yourself, which brings us to step number 5. And it may be the most important step of all. Learn to tolerate disappointing other people, because you will. When you begin rebuilding your identity, some people in your life are not going to like it. But remember, the people who benefit from your lack of boundaries often experience your growth as loss. Now, that doesn't automatically mean they're unhealthy, but it does mean your relationship is changing, and it needs to change. And change can be uncomfortable for everybody involved, especially in the beginning. They became very comfortable with the version of you that always said yes, the version that overfunctioned and did for everybody else but themselves. That version, the version that really had any needs of their own, at least expressed. So, as you begin setting healthy boundaries, making different choices, and finally honoring yourself, which are all great, some of your relationships will naturally shift. And that doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. You know what it really means? It means you're growing. And remember, you're not responsible for managing everyone else's disappointment nor their feelings. So, that's the end of the series. And I do, at the end of this four-part series, I do want to leave you with one final thought. If you've spent years believing your value came from taking care of others or taking care of everybody else, I do hope you remember this. You were never born to simply meet everyone else's needs. You were born to become yourself, your unique self. You were never meant to just be the helper or the caretaker or the dependable one or the responsible one. You were always meant to be a whole person, a person that you really believe in, a person with dreams and preferences, and one that has joy in their life and needs and values, a life that belongs to you. If you spent years believing your value came from taking care of everyone else, please remember this. You were never meant to be a role. And again, you were meant to be a whole person, and a person with their own distinct identity. The goal here isn't to become someone entirely new. It's just to reconnect with the person you have always been underneath all the heavy roles you learned to play at a very young age. And, that process takes time. But every time you choose yourself, every boundary you set, every preference you honor, every decision you make, because it reflects who you are strengthening your identity, one small choice at a time. If this 4-part series is resonating with you, I would, of course, love to hear from you. Maybe your biggest takeaway, a comment, anything you want to share with me. I always welcome those. And if you're interested in learning more about family of origin, healing, codependency, emotionally immature parents and partners, rebuilding relationships, the list goes on, hit that subscribe button. And again, I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for walking me through this series with you. And I look forward to seeing you in our next video series.